So what is your CASA story?
Okay, so it started with me and my husband being foster parents. It was something that I had wanted to do for a very long time. I had a friend growing up who was in foster care and had some really terrible things happen. And I thought even on my absolute worst day, I wouldn't be that bad. And so I talked him into being a foster parent, and we had a few placements. And our last placement was a pregnant teen who aged out without any sort of permanency. And we got her a few days before Thanksgiving one year in 2020. And she aged out in our house and stayed living with us. And she had a CASA volunteer. And she changed my life in a lot of ways, in a lot of really, really good ways. And I always wanted to be a therapist. And so I had planned to go for counseling. And after she stayed with us and had her baby and we saw all of the systems, I decided to go for social work instead so that I could work to change those systems. And her CASA advocate is still in contact with me. She was life-changing in a lot of ways. I couldn't have been a foster parent without her. So I ended up applying for my master's in social work, and I'm doing that now. And after I was accepted, I had been a stay-at-home mom, foster parent for like 10 years. And then after I was about to start school, this CASA job came up for Southeast Nebraska CASA. And I told my husband, like, I'll just apply and see what happens, and got offered the job. And so now I work for CASA. I'm going to school for social work, and I'm hoping to be a therapist working within the system in the future.
So take me through, because we've had different perspectives of this, so I think this is important to hear. As the foster parent, having a CASA worker come to you, what was that like from your viewpoint in there?
She was incredible. She was a huge support for me because it was the first time that we had an older kid. And her CASA volunteer had been there for a lot of it. She knew her from, I don't forget how many years, but she knew the story. She knew her background and everything. And so having her to just tell me, like, you're not crazy, like you're doing something really important and it's hard, but like you're doing so much for her. That was really, really important for me as a foster parent when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like we didn't have that much of an age gap either. I was very young for her to be like in that role, and then she's going to be 19, and so there's that dynamic of like, I'm an adult now, and all of those kinds of things. So this particular kiddo, we weren't sure if she was going to graduate high school, and I'm trying really hard not to say names. So she was behind in high school, and I kept talking to her CASA volunteer, like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And the two of us went to her high school graduation, and we got to watch her walk the stage. And it was one of the proudest moments of my entire life, because I know that wouldn't have been possible without her CASA and myself to cheer her on, to make sure things were getting done. And I have her diploma. I don't know where my high school diploma is, but hers, she had a lot of life changes. Hers is hanging up in my house. I am so proud of her. And
You said you're working at CASA now.
yes.
So are you doing the volunteer type stuff, or what's your role then?
So I supervise the volunteers. I'm not a current volunteer. I'm planning to be a volunteer once I'm no longer working for CASA, because I've seen how important it is, and to have someone throughout the life of the case is so important. There's so many changes that happen with caseworkers, judges, attorneys. To have that one person who knows what's happening in the kid's life is life-changing. Like, it really is.
when you are working with the volunteers, what that's got to be that. Like I assume those volunteers probably need a way to kind of unload
Yes.
some of their because I mean they take on that to a
Yeah.
certain extent. They take on that heaviness.
Yeah.
So is that something that you do for the volunteers? Is that part of that role?
I think for the volunteers, they know, and for myself too, because I thought I understood foster care. My undergrad was psychology, so I had a lot of knowledge. And then you're in the system trying to understand how it all works, and you realize that you don't know, and you know that it's bad, but then you're up close and personal, and you see where it's really failing, and you see the effects of where it's failing, and that is the hard part. You know, it's one thing to hear about child abuse, which is really sad and hard and everything, but then to see where those hard things keep coming up in the future, and that's the part that gets really hard. Well, and I also am coming from a therapist perspective too, of just like being a volunteer and supervising the volunteers and those kinds of things is incredible because you do get to be part of that change where you see those things happening. The volunteers are constantly advocating for changes to be made and for big decisions to be made in the best interest of those kids. And I can't stop thinking about how, you know, we have volunteers on some cases, but not all cases. And so having those people who will drive farther, who will take more time, who will see kids in different places, like all of those things really become so important. And people who really genuinely care and will stay. So a lot of people don't understand what's happening in the system because we didn't have to be part of that system. And so then they become this advocate for a kid and they're learning the system. And when they get overwhelmed and they're like, what's going on? Like, why is this way? Reminding them that you're advocating for kids and how much more scared a child is. If this is overwhelming for you, think about that kid. And you can be that person for those kids to help them feel safer, to help them have their best interests presented in court. It's just really, really important. Okay. I don't think I have anything else. Unless you're like, yeah.
No, I